And the closer that you can align the focus of your social impact work with your business outcomes, both the opportunities and the risks, the more impactful that initiative will be, and the less it will feel like an outlier to what it is that the organization does.
Hello and welcome to Corporate Social Impact Insights. I'm Siddharth Chatterjee from the AVPN Academy team, and this is a series where we interview experts and leaders to learn about how we can amplify our contribution as practitioners in the corporate social impact space. The following is my conversation with Gillian Pearl, founder and CEO of Pearl Consulting. Pearl Consulting is a social impact consultancy whose vision is to work towards creating a fair, safe, and inclusive world where opportunity is a right and not a privilege. This conversation follows on the back of a learning circle where Gillian was the featured practitioner. Learning circles are a monthly series of small group discussions for corporate practitioners, which is another initiative supported by AVPN Academy's Corporate Social Impact Center. You can learn more about all of this in the description below. To give you a short preview of our conversation, I must say that speaking with Gillian on the topic of amplifying impact by aligning with business goals was an illuminating experience. We get objective about what alignment between impact and business looks like. We discuss the importance of taking a pause, of seeking expert help, and the opportunities and risks given the rise of ESG reporting. We also talk about the tools that corporate social impact practitioners have to drive support from within their organization. There's a depth to Gillian's insight that only comes from having a wealth of experience both within business and with helping numerous businesses with their corporate social impact work. And now I'm genuinely excited to be able to share these insights with you. Let's get into it. Hello, Gillian. It is so wonderful to be speaking with you today. Really excited for our conversation. And just to get started, would love to hear from you about the work that you do at Pearl Consulting.
Great. Thanks, Sid. So nice to be here. So my name is Gillian Pearl, and I am the CEO of Pearl Consulting. And we are a social impact consultancy. And our vision is to create a fair, safe, and inclusive world where opportunity is a right and not a privilege. And today we have a team of more than 40 consultants worldwide, and our team builds and scales social impact programs that change people's lives for the better. So from grassroots to global, we like to collaborate with our clients and partners to create initiatives that deliver positive and sustainable outcomes. So that is who we are.
That sounds really great. Thank you, Gillian. Let's dive into the topic that we're talking about today. Amplifying impact by being aligned with the objectives of your business. That can be quite a mouthful. And I think we see the point of it as a corporate social impact practitioner, the point of being aligned or being a part of your business objectives. But if you were to really motivate this idea for us a little bit, what does having great alignment really do for your corporate social impact? What can it do?
It's a great question. And I think that the alignment piece, what it does is it really ensures that whatever social impact initiative you're focusing on, that you're really drawing on the most appropriate resources, the skills, the reach, the power to convene, all of these resources that as an organization you are able to bring to bear upon that issue. And the closer aligned you are, then the more power, effectiveness that you can potentially bring to bear upon that issue and the way that you are dealing with it, the way that you are bringing the resources that you have available to the table, right? And I think that it's an interesting one. What you don't want to have happen, of course, is to compromise the integrity of the initiatives that you work on by having, corporate pressures intervene. But I think that bringing the resources that you have and the knowledge that you have, the skills, and not only the funding, which a lot of people just think about it as a funding issue, which it isn't, right? It's so many other things, your people, et cetera. So the closer that you can bring your resources to bear, and the closer that you can align the focus of your social impact work with your business outcomes, both the opportunities and the risks, the more impactful that initiative will be, and the less it will feel like an outlier to what it is that the organization does.
I think the last point is really crucial to think about, because sometimes it can feel like impact is, and we had a previous conversation with Rama here on the same podcast, and what she talked about was the 2% kind of. So in India, specifically corporate social responsibility, there's a 2% mandate. The 2% of your profits need to be invested in something that has social impact. But what happens, or what can end up happening, is it becomes only a 2% conversation, but we want it to be as much a part of the business as anything else. That's one way to amplify your impact, is to have the entire business, all 100% of it, be impactful. And I think that's really, it's a mindset shift, but it's one that can help amplify your impact. In terms of the specifics of how you'd achieve that, what does it mean to seek alignment? How would you test whether your impact aligns with the objectives that your business has?
I think you need to look at it in terms of, there's a tool we like to use, which is a 2x2 matrix, where you use the X and Y axis. And then on one axis, you're looking at business objectives. And on the other axis, you're looking at social impact. So for example, if you want to plot employee engagement, and within your employee engagement initiative, you give employees the ability to donate to any social issue that they're interested in. And perhaps you do some volunteering, or you give people time to volunteer on their own. Now, in terms of engaging your employees in issues that they care about, and developing increased satisfaction at work and pride associated with the company because they allocate these resources in that way, those are all very good things. But in terms of moving the needle on a specific social impact issue, that would rank very low, because you are giving employees the ability to choose what's relevant to them. So it's an interesting analysis to do, because if you need to think about how impactful is this investment, how much money as a company are we putting towards this investment in terms of donation, and maybe there's a matching program, and we're giving employees time, and we've got internal resources allocated to this. It's a very interesting analysis to do, because you need to challenge yourself, right? Is this both achieving high social impact and achieving business results at the same time? So you might score very high on business results with that example, but probably quite low on social impact.
Right.
So I think it's an interesting one to challenge ourselves on, and that matrix is very easy to use, and you can just do a scan of all the different social impact investments that you are making as an organization, and then do a plotting exercise to say, truly, where does this sit?
And could I ask what the quadrants of that matrix are? So is it high impact, low business alignment?
Yes. Well, if you are in the top right corner, then you have rated that initiative as achieving high social impact. And of course, you've got to create indicators that you use to measure what a good social impact looks like in that specific issue. And same thing for the business indicators too. You would have specific criteria that would say, yes, if we achieve these 5 criteria, this is what makes a strong business impact. And so if it is in the top right corner, you're really achieving the best of the best. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that is the biggest scaled program that you have available. So again, it depends on what your criteria is. If one of your criteria is that it has to achieve the biggest scale, perhaps it wouldn't be in the top right. Perhaps it would be top left, because you're achieving very high social impact potentially, or maybe it's maybe scale isn't part of one of the criteria. So it would depend what the criteria is that you choose to use for how you rate those initiatives. But your top right, yes, is the where you want to be generally. But you also might have agreements that, for example, employee engagement initiatives, they are very important and they do achieve high business results. But because it's lower social impact, perhaps what you want to consider is that actually that becomes only an automated program. You remove many of the people resources in terms of management of the program, and you put those resources towards a different initiative, just as an
Right.
example.
Yeah, and that's so fascinating because even though it sounds so simple to describe the exercise, it just seems like the level of clarity that you'd get from actually going through that process, that's a
Yes.
lot greater than we tend to have. I mean, we
Yes.
know that things align in some way, and then there are maybe common phrases or terms that we use, but to just see it in that sense. So you can see that, for example, your employee engagement might be very important to the business, but it's not that effective a way for achieving some of your social impact goals. So just have that visually laid out with that level of clarity. It can really help you make a case for what kinds of initiatives might be useful to do for the business. And that kind of clarity, I think, would also help you when you're not just talking internally, but externally with your partners, with your impact organizations. And this is something that you spoke about a little bit on the learning circle we had on the same topic. So would you like to go into a little bit, what does clarity of your impact with business goals do for your relationships with impact organizations, with partners, all of that?
And you're absolutely right. What that matrix does, or anything like that, where you are removing the subjectivity out of it, because you are clearly defining what is the criteria, why are we investing in this place, what are we hoping for in terms of outcomes, not only social impact outcomes, but also business outcomes. And having that clarity, it enables much easier conversations internally, frankly, because it removes the subjectivity and the emotion, and it becomes a very objective discussion. But then also with your partners, and being able, again, to be transparent with them about what are we trying to achieve. This is what we're working towards, and this is what we need to achieve, and this is why we think working with you would be best. We bring these resources to the table. We think you bring these resources to the table, and here is where we have our common goal. And this is how we'd like to work together. And so not only with your partner organizations, but also with stakeholder groups. For publicly traded organizations, you are investing not your money. This is not your money as a corporate social impact practitioner. This is the company's money. This is your shareholders' money. So equally, you need to show how is the investment of that money? What's the return on the investment? How's it being effective? And it needs to both be effective from, again, a business objective perspective, as well as a social impact objective. Right. You could never go to your shareholders or your investor community and say, oh, yes, that 50 million that we invested, well, I can't really talk to you about the business impact. Or I mean,
Right.
you couldn't do that. So the same principles apply here.
Absolutely. And again, I think that kind of objectivity that you would say really helps you have a conversation, even with partners, even with a nonprofit organization that you're working with. Because a lot of the times what we see in the way that corporate social impact relates to impact organizations, they're seen as the one-time implementer of a particular initiative. But we're really on the other end of the spectrum where we see the mutual benefit, right? And that's something that I think you can be shy about as a corporate social impact practitioner, the fact that your business also has objectives that are being met or furthered by your impact initiatives, right? But being clear about that allows the impact organizations that you're working with to also contribute and to see themselves as equal partners in achieving mutually agreed upon and shared goals. It's really a great example of how clarity helps in all these conversations. That's something that I think corporate social impact practitioners can think about. And something we talked a lot about in our learning circle is that when you're thinking about how you can help your business objectives be furthered through your corporate social impact, is not just take the lens of the opportunities that corporate social impact has for your business, but also the risks that can be mitigated by doing corporate social impact effectively and across the entire business. And specifically, I think you spoke about ESG trends in that aspect. So what do you see as a major risk for businesses as it comes to their impact?
Yes, the rise of ESG and mandatory disclosure and reporting, and that only increasing more and more. When it comes to ESG, the fact that it's moved away from CSR, it's not a nice to have, it's a mandated focus area. And there are a few really interesting trends that we're seeing. Some of those trends relate to how ESG is being embedded within organizations. So, for example, we saw that MasterCard announced not long ago that ESG goals for the company are now being embedded within employees' job descriptions, and that, bonuses are being linked to not only their standard KPIs, but also ESG, key performance indicators or objectives. And that is great to see. Another example is that recently global asset manager AXA announced that they would be including ESG targets within the C-suite, within executives' job descriptions, and that they would be mandating that in terms of continuing to invest in those organizations. And not only that, they would be divesting from organizations where they did not see ESG targets clearly represented within the C-suite. So I think that those examples of the embedding of ESG targets throughout the organization, it's absolutely critical. It's on the rise, which is great to see. And, it's a trend that will only continue, I'm sure. And so when we work with our clients on strategic planning or social impact programming and developing programs with them, we certainly like to look at how the initiatives are being embedded and whose targets are these, and who's actually paying attention to these, and who wants to make sure that these things happen. So that's always part of our conversation with our clients. Yes.
Right. Could you go into that a little bit more in terms of, at Pearl Consulting, what do you usually see in terms of ESG risks that organizations have that they're not really aware of, or it's not on their radar?
Yes. Well, I think that with organizations doing materiality assessments now, what happens with the risks is that perhaps there are social impact opportunities, that the flip side of those are also risks as well. So, for example, let's say that you have a factory, and within that factory, perhaps you have many women employees. Perhaps in the location in which that factory is situated, perhaps there are issues that result in, if those women in their families, perhaps the men in those families, for whatever reason, perhaps some of them are farmers, perhaps that year what they were growing has been threatened or impacted by the climate emergency. For the women working in the factory, perhaps they become the main breadwinner, and perhaps additional skills that they might have, or maybe it's financial inclusion programs, maybe it's access to formal financial products and education around financial products. Perhaps there are these other skills that you can provide to your factory workers that might seem to be left of center in terms of the job that they currently have. But perhaps the risk that you are mitigating by investing in your employees in that way, as a result of understanding the broader operating context of where your factory is, you can see how it might seem like a left of center program initiative, but actually what you're doing is you're mitigating risk of your employees having to move potentially because their families haven't been able to continue to earn the kind of income that they've earned previously. And by skilling up your workers and being able to introduce an additional revenue stream or better money management, perhaps their family doesn't have to move to another location. That's a long-winded example, but I'm just trying to show that when you do these risk assessments and you see, oh, actually, if I can address this risk by counterbalancing with something over here on this side, and at the same time, you are looking at gender equality and other SDGs around poverty alleviation, for example, or education, there are very interesting things that you can do in and around part of your business or your supply chain that might not seem obvious up front, but then when you dig a little bit, it becomes very obvious and a real opportunity. So you're mitigating a risk on one side, but you're capitalizing on an opportunity on the other side.
Right. And that's fascinating. It's great to see your social impact consulting hat being, you putting it on as you talk to us. And I think it was not at all a long-winded example, because I think what it really made clear is that actually you have to take a moment to pause and kind of survey the entire field of what your business is doing, what potential impacts it can have, and And I think that this is the hard thing to wrap your head around, but it's a process that's constantly changing, right? Your business's environment is constantly changing. We just talked about ESG risks. That's one way in which, as ESG reporting becomes more and more important, not just for you, but for your investors, for your customers. It becomes more important to understand what your business might need to do in that aspect. But there are also other internal and external changes that are happening that will change the environment in which your business functions. It will change the goals that your business might have. It'll change the risks and the needs of your business, right? So whenever you're having this kind of change, and over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of it. When you're having this kind of change, that's a really pivotal moment, and maybe it's a great moment to pause and take a moment to reflect. And this is something that you spoke about in our learning circle as well, the opportunity to pause. And it's really interesting how pausing can help you kind of see an opportunity, which is otherwise seems really out of left field.
Yes. And I think to that point, that's a really interesting one. So at Pearl Consulting, one of our key service pillars is strategic planning. And so within our strategic planning services, we work with our clients and exactly what you're talking about, take that moment to pause. And there can be all sorts of different, whether it's a milestone, whether it's external environment, internal environment, there can different things that can happen that feed into that moment to pause. Perhaps there's a new team that's been created. Perhaps your budget has been cut. Perhaps you've moved to a new job. Perhaps, there's new mandatory reporting that's coming down the line. Any of those changes in the operating environment actually can necessitate a real need to pause and to see if there's a way, whether it's to do research, whether it's to do some benchmarking, whether it's to do consultation with different stakeholder groups. All of those inputs are going to help you either confirm that you're still heading in the right direction, or shed some light or insight into the fact that perhaps you need to tweak your direction or your initiative, or perhaps you need to take a totally different approach or direction. And I know that that's never easy to do, especially in very large organizations. However, to just keep going the way you're going and not to stick your head up and look around at important milestones or important moments is to really do the impact of your initiative a disservice, because we are now living in an extremely dynamic environment with the climate emergency upon us. We are constantly having to check to make sure, are we heading in the right direction? Are we doing the right thing? And of course, just ESG more broadly, with huge numbers of refugees and migrants all around the world as a result of, again, climate disasters, war, COVID, all sorts of different reasons. We've got lots of issues that we need to deal with as individuals and as organizations, and it's a very dynamic environment, constantly changing.
Yeah. And I think it's so wonderful to have this conversation, because it shows you not just that it can be overwhelming, but also that you have all sorts of ways that you can seek support and that you can seek help. So you don't need to be kind of the proverbial ostrich burying your head in the sand, which is the natural tendency when things do seem overwhelming. Is either you double down on your initiatives or you freeze. But rather than doing that, you can seek help. You can seek external help. But there are also lots of strategies that you can use as a corporate social impact practitioner to internally get support, to integrate with the other parts of your business, to get help for your corporate social impact initiatives. So maybe we could move towards that aspect of it. So as a corporate social impact practitioner, both the challenge that you have being a very lean pillar within your business, and how do you get help? How do you get support?
Yes. So there are a few things that I'd like to suggest, or ideas that we like to suggest to our clients. I'll talk about 4 things. The first, education. So many organizations offer a benefit of professional development or professional education. There are so many great short courses out there, or investing in spending time with the AVPN Academy or the learning circles or other types of educational initiatives that are out there to really upskill and educate yourself. That's 1. 2, build internal allies. So identify who are C-suite or senior managers or people in position of power, influence, or budget holders who can be your allies. Within the corporate social impact space, we are very often sole practitioners or part of a very small team, and that can be really lonely. Many of us often talk about speaking to each other that, we're finally with our tribe. And
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more with that. It can be a very isolating role because often it's a very small team internally. So again, find those allies who are interested in what you're doing, who have influence, who can be speaking the same narrative as you, and who can be there to be your ally as you try and push new initiatives forward. The third is budgets, and this is related to the point about allies. If you are aligned in your initiatives with business objectives, then perhaps the budget that you have for your social impact programming, perhaps that can be expanded by tapping into the budgets of the business units or the different groups.
Right.
If you have aligned your outcomes with what they are trying to achieve, perhaps it's employee attraction and retention. So you talk to your HR department about the budgets that they have, or perhaps it's about promoting services to a different demographic. Then there's all sorts of ways to tap into additional budgets that can potentially extend your initiative. And the fourth point I would make is about finding peers and finding, whether it's a critical friend, as we call them, or just finding other practitioners who you can really be speaking to, whether it's regularly or be part of an informal group where you can bounce ideas around. Because through that kind of critical friend relationship or buddy relationship, you're going to be able to get some great ideas about how to deal with different issues that again, you might be dealing with alone or in a small group within your own organization. So Those are just a few ideas.
That's incredible. I think that was a very, very quick masterclass on all the tools that you have internally, because it is really hard. It's really hard to work as a solo or a very small team as a corporate social impact practitioner. And there is nobody who's really telling you about the tools that you might have to rally your organization for impact and rally your impact for your organization. Gillian, this has been really great. And maybe as a closing, I would love to hear if you have any final thoughts for our community of corporate social impact practitioners or anything on this topic.
I think for me, and participating in the AVPN Learning Circle or AVPN Academy it's a wonderful thing. I love connecting with my peers and with people who are in this community and working towards the same goals. And I think that the way forward is only ever going to be in partnership with other organizations and sharing what we've learned, sharing what's gone well, sharing what hasn't gone so well, so that we can move forward together. And so I'm very thankful to be participating with you, Sid, and be a member of AVPN and collaborating with this community, because I think together we can do great things.
Thank you, Gillian. I think it's an absolute privilege to have you be a part of our community, and we're really excited for the work that you continue to do, and also how our corporate organizations can work together and do incredible things. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for the conversation, Sid. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.
Corporate Social Impact Insights is part of the AVPN Academy Corporate Social Impact Center, which is established in partnership with Johnson & Johnson, Miller Trust, and Visa. The center also includes self-paced modules, a library of content, and learning circles, which are a monthly series of small group discussions for corporate practitioners. Learn more at academy.avpn.asia. This is a monthly podcast series, and we hope you will tune in for another episode soon. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.